This morning we're pleased to have for yet another time Eric Luetkemeyer. He is a top professional and we're so pleased to have him come in and talk to us on these very important subjects. What you need to know is that he is president of his own company called Growth Plan Strategies. It's a management consulting organization. He's also worked for some other pretty large organizations you may be familiar with in the area, that being Knight Dermatology Institute, the Vein Associates of America, and Levitt Management Group. He founded his organization to provide guidance to small, medium-sized businesses that actually struggle through the breakthrough to get to that elusive next level. So growth comes in many forms. We'll probably hear about that today. It's personal, it's professional, it's financial, and he likes to see his clients achieve all three of them. They all have different goals. Let's face it, all of you have different goals, so does his clients. And with his underlying principles, the same questions he's asking. How do I grow my business? How do I get to the next level? How do I make more and work less? He spent 20 years cultivating, changing, growing, and executing the vision for multi-million and multi-billion-dollar corporations, both public and private. His objective is to take experience and provide it to his clients with a limited and focused approach to achieving their goals. Would you please give a nice warm welcome to Eric Luetkemeyer.
I look at revenue growth in multiple stages, and growth, as Hank said, comes in many forms. So revenue in the minds of physicians is usually the top line. You know, how do I grow the top line? Revenue really, to me, means it's the bottom line. It doesn't matter if it comes through the top or it comes through the middle. It's all about cash flow at the bottom. So I'm going to get remedial here for a minute, and we're going to go back to basics. You've heard me talk about other alternative revenue streams before, the ACA, the impact on the healthcare industry. That's all fine. We'll touch on that a little bit today, and I'll give you some case studies at the end. Okay, basic definition of a business plan. Everyone already knows this, so forgive me. Again, remedial. The definition of a business plan is a written document describing the nature of the business, the sales and marketing strategy, the risks associated with the venture, and the financial background, and containing a projected profit and loss statement, and that's where I come in. There are people in the audience that obviously focus on the sales and marketing aspects of it, which is a completely different topic, and I'm not going to spend any time there. The business model, on the other hand, is what you do after you've got the plan defined. The plan is the roadmap. The model, I look at it, it's probably a bad analogy. I look at it as the business plan as a mosaic. It's a mosaic picture. And the business model are all the little pixels that go into that mosaic. And if you take those out, the plan changes. So the business model should be used continually to measure the success of the business and help you move in the right directions. It's fluid. It continually changes based on the opportunities that are presented to you. Whether it's new modalities or new opportunities in your marketplace or new ideas or initiatives, you need to have a model, and everyone's familiar with ROI, but you need to have a model associated with every growth initiative that you have. And everyone refers to me as the numbers guy, and I guess I'm getting that reputation, but the numbers don't lie. And without the numbers, your ideas are just an expensive way of gambling with either your money or someone else's money. So it really pays to drill down, do the homework, get granular, and build it into your assumptions for any growth initiative that you're attempting in any business, whether it's healthcare or any other industry. You'll make mistakes, but the idea of the model is that you take the risk, you mitigate some of the risk associated with any growth initiative based on the fact that you understand the numbers behind it and how to layer those in. Okay, all my clients say that they're ready to grow. They want more. And so my first objective is to define that growth for them and what is the goal of their initiative, what's their current capacity, what's their target market, what's their strategy, what's their tolerance for risk, because any growth comes with risk. And it's very easy to grow a business. Anyone can do it. It takes a little more skill to grow it in a profitable way. So it comes down to managing the process, tracking the results, and then a risk assessment associated with every initiative. What are the impacts going to be operationally? What are the impacts going to be financially? What are the impacts going to be on my personal life? Am I going to be taken away from my family? It all comes into play. And where do they see their opportunities? How do you want to grow? How do physicians want to grow in this market? Do they want to expand? Do they want to add more locations? And I will say, from my experience, the old brick and mortar style is probably going away a little bit more. They're utilizing technology to expand into other markets as opposed to the old brick and mortar. But that being said, when they expand into other markets and they're more geographically diverse, they have more leverage. And that's what medicine has always been about. It's about leverage and scale. And that's how you build a world-class organization. You garner more leverage with third-party payers if you are more geographically diverse because you're touching more member lives. And as I've said before, the biggest asset of a physician is the license they hang on the wall. The biggest asset of a business owner physician is their distribution channel. That's what it's all about. And how many member lives they can touch gives them leverage for negotiating better contracts. Are they going to add additional modalities? Are they looking for passive solutions? Do they need more patients? Do they need more contracts? Do they need to be more third-party payers? And do they need better operational controls? Okay, so building efficiencies into your current model. All my clients, before we embark on any new initiatives for them, we go through a baseline audit period. And you guys have heard me talk about baseline before. They need to understand where they make their money. They need to understand the current mix of business that they have and leverage that, become diversified. To step back for a second, I had a client in Birmingham, Alabama, where 80% of his business was reliant on one insurance carrier, and they pulled his contract. And so he lost his business. He had to start over. But we did, and he's doing fine right now. The point is that they need to, the physicians or any other business needs to understand their mix. Be diversified. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Everyone's heard that. And understanding your key performance indicators, what makes you money, what are the metrics that you need to measure on a daily, weekly, monthly basis in order to understand exactly how you're doing. A lot of small businesses and even medium-sized businesses measure their success based on how much money is in the bank at the end of the month. And that's a horrible way to run a business. It just is. So understand where the risks are, fix them first, seek advice from your peer group, invite criticism, and be ready to listen. And physicians are not, no offense to the community, physicians are not always ready to listen to advice. So they've got to be led to water more than once. And if you can make it their idea, it becomes easier to get them across that threshold. And I tell all my clients to be an active owner. A lot of physicians, they just want to, look, I hire management, I just want to treat patients. But if they're not paying attention and if they're not part of the process and if they're not defining the vision and the objective, then they lose. Okay, alternative revenue streams. Like I said earlier, there's in my mind, revenue is two things. Revenue is how do I layer in other passive income streams into my existing captive audience, and how do I control the cost structure? Because both of those are revenue to me, because it all drops to the bottom, and it's all cash to the owner. We look for passive forms of income, find out what works for their specialty. There's multiple choices out there for physicians, whether or not if they're an internist, they may go with a weight loss or nutraceuticals or find other ways that they've got their captive audience to put a passive retail type delivery system into their existing platform. If they're surgeons, they may add cosmetics, they may add more modalities, they may go to the medical device industry. It really depends on the individual physician and what they're comfortable with, because that's what it comes down to. Are they comfortable with adding revenue streams that that philosophically match the way that they practice medicine, because they don't want to come across as I'm a salesman, I'm selling something, it's not snake oil. So you have to get them comfortable and you have to find the right fit for them. They need to be a big part of this. And again, leveraging your captive audience. Every patient that walks through your door every day, in a fee-for-service model, the only way for physicians to make money is with their hands, right? The more patients they see, the more money they make. And I tell all my clients, they will make more money with using this instead of their hands. And leveraging other people's hands, less expensive sets of hands, to grow their business. All right, and cost structure, renegotiating existing contracts, every material contract, whether it's a vendor-based or third-party payer. Obviously, you can't negotiate with Medicare, but every third-party payer is a derivative of Medicare. So solo practitioners, in the best-case scenario, negotiate 80% of Medicare rates. If they can leverage that and negotiate that, they can get upwards of 120% of Medicare rates. They're getting paid more for the same patient load. And then they can decide how to utilize that cash flow to grow their business. And then controlling fixed expenses. Your variable expenses inside your profit and loss statement for a medical office is your labor and your medical supplies and your bonus structures for your mid-levels and or other providers. Okay, alternative revenue streams, retail healthcare, we talked a little bit about that. New modalities, devices, adding additional providers to your group if you have the ability or the capacity inside of your existing location. You're doubling your cost and you're doubling your capacity, in all honesty. Anything that you're currently outsourcing, bring it in-house, control it. If you're sending out specimens, bring them in-house if it makes sense. Again, this goes back to the business model. If the proposed alternative revenue stream makes sense, do the homework, understand what the delivery system is going to be, understand what the cost structure is going to be, and if it makes sense to bring it in. Okay, shared savings. The Affordable Care Act really changed the game a little bit here. I've never been a proponent of the Affordable Care Act. I think I've said that before, but I will say this: it has opened up a breeding ground for innovation in the tech space, and there are going to be some very interesting product lines coming on board that help physicians through technology continue to treat their existing patient base, share some of the savings along the way in a one-sided or two-sided risk model, and free their time up to treat patients with their hands and their skill set and utilize technicians for some of the other stuff in a passive way. Some of the stuff that's coming on board in the next year is going to be incredible. It's going to change medicine. I really believe that. And then group purchasing organization. The ACA has also allowed for more of a loose affiliation with doctors. The ACA, and if you're an ACO, forgive all the acronyms, an accountable care organization, you're not subject to Stark laws, you're not subject to anti-kickback or self-referral laws, which means that you can loosely affiliate with like-minded physicians inside of your network, inside of your group, inside of your market, however you want to call it. But all that it does is give you leverage and buying power. It's not just your $100,000 a year that you're spending on medical supplies now. It could be $1 million a year that you're spending on supplies as a group, as a whole. So you obviously get better savings, and the savings are anywhere between 15 and 25%. And that 15 and 25% on $100,000 in your office is an extra $25,000 to you at the end of the day. So again, there's different ways to make money inside of the model. It's picking the ones that are right for the individual practices. Okay, I'm going to give you 3 case studies. I'm going to give you a conservative, moderate, and aggressive case study. These are actual clients of mine, and all of these clients engaged me for a baseline audit, and we went in and figured out ways for them to grow. So the first case study is he's a primary care physician. He's been in business 20 years. He engaged for the baseline audit, and I renegotiated 3 of his top 5 insurance contracts and all of his material vendors. He didn't expand capacity or implement some of the other suggestions that I did post-audit because he just wasn't comfortable. He wasn't ready for it. He was happy because he's making more money, but he's not ready for growth. So this is the scenario. 2013 is the blue, 2014 is the green. I came on board in August of 2013. We did a baseline audit, and we immediately renegotiated. And you can see the uptick in his profitability. These are all receipts, by the way. You can see the uptick in his profitability all the way through November, and then he took a decline in December because he took 2 weeks off. And then we start out the new year. His trend line is moving up. He's making more money on the exact same patient load. He's not taking on any more patients. But because we renegotiated all of his contracts, all of that cash drops to the bottom. If he was willing to do more, that number would be higher. So, but he's happy. He's making an extra $20,000 a month, and he's very happy. Okay, case study number 2 is more of a moderate situation. She's a specialist. She's a solo practitioner. She's been in business for 7 years. We renegotiated all of her material contracts. We moved her to a larger facility to increase her capacity. We hired a mid-level provider. We added alternative revenue streams, and then her office manager quit. And then she hired a biller instead of an office manager against my advice, and you'll see that downturn. Trying to save an extra $20,000 or $30,000 a year to get a less qualified person in there is a huge mistake. You get what you pay for in every sector, and you'll see that. Okay, so 2012, I was engaged in 2012. In July, we started to renegotiate, and it's a process. You don't get all of, it's not like a one-time call. It's a process to get carriers to negotiate with a provider in any sense of the word. The old days, you used to be able to sit down with the rep, and now it's not like that. You have to state your case, you have to build the statistics, and you have to negotiate with them for a longer term period. But anyway, so she started to see an uptick all the way through 2012, and then she had a baby in February of 2013, so that's the dip. We knew the baby was coming, obviously. It was no secret. So what we started to do was plan ahead. And so we moved her to a new facility in February while she was on maternity leave, larger facility. We also hired a mid-level provider back in November. And so she was training her so that when she was out on maternity, she didn't lose everything. So you'll see with the addition of the modalities, the alternative revenue streams, the additional provider, a mid-level with cheaper set of hands, no offense, you'll see the huge increase in her receipts. And then, of course, she took time off in December. In December, that's when her office manager quit. And then you'll see in 2014, the green. She's declining. She's declining because she has a biller running her day-to-day operations. And as you can imagine, she's called, and we are looking for an office manager for her there. And I'm going to be talking to you about that. Okay. Case study number 3. This is what I would call an aggressive case study. This is by far my best client as far as following through on the suggestions that we, and the problems that we found during the baseline audit. He's been in business 6 years. He engaged me to elevate his existing business model, and we renegotiated every material contract. We moved every outsourced piece of revenue in-house. He was sending out specimens to a lab, and now we pulled that back inside. Now he can bill for the technical component and the professional component of that lab. That's an extra $600,000 a year to him. We hired another physician and 2 mid-levels. We added 2 layers of alternative revenue streams. One he doesn't even have to touch. It's passive. It is a medical device that he provides a diagnosis, and the technician does the service. So while he's over here seeing patients, the technician is seeing other patients in a completely different component of his business. We expanded the market reach into 2 new markets, and his individual income went from $600,000 a year to $1.8 million in 12 months. So he's my poster child. You'll see in 2012, he's pretty static. He's moving along, and there's some seasonality in there. He took a peak in May at Skin Cancer Awareness Month. And then you'll see when we engaged, when we started to add other alternative revenue streams and add providers and capacity, you just see the increase. And he goes from roughly $140,000 to $150,000 a month to, these are monthly numbers, by the way. Now he is doing almost $800,000 a month. And so the point behind all this is that having a business plan is something that they do in the beginning. And 20 years ago, a physician could walk into any bank, any lending institution, and show them the license, and that's all they needed to get a business loan, a signature loan. They didn't need an executive summary. They didn't need a business plan in and of itself, but that's changed. Dodd-Frank has changed that. So they need to develop a plan, but the plan isn't as important as the model. It's really not. The plan is just broad strokes. The model in and of itself is the key here, and it's understanding at the most granular level every aspect of that model so that you make good decisions. And if there's questions, then more than happy to answer.
Let's get started. Dan.
Dan O'Connell, MOROF ambassador. Very good, Eric. I know you're a numbers guy, but I think you underestimate your word power. So I was struck by your mentioning of the seeking advice, the inviting criticism, and be ready to listen. I think that's a formula for anybody. But I think your case studies actually parallel that, because the first 2 didn't seem to listen on some points that clearly were shown by the numbers to reflect that they didn't listen.
That's exactly right.
Now, it's not that you're omniscient, probably, but it's nice to listen. So my question really is, because I talked at my last non-provider meeting about seeking open-minded and progressive doctors. Apparently there are some. So how do you invite them or engage them to listen better?
Physicians, there's, in my mind, there are 2 types. There's one type that knows everything and doesn't want to hear it, and the other type is more receptive. So the one that doesn't want to hear it, you've got to show it to them. You've got to show it to them in a very visual way. That you have to provide them case studies. You have to provide them the statistics. You have to get their respect. And the ones that are open to it, you just have to take control. You have to be very definitive and very, very aggressive in your approach.
Thank you.
Hi, Eric. Good morning. I'm working with a client right now on building volume. And building volume is building relationships, patient satisfaction, people talk, social media. How can I convince my client that branding and marketing just isn't about dropping off pens and highlighters? How can I convince them that I need to be building relationships with chambers of commerces and other local business owners and things like that. What words can I say to convince them of that?
What I would say is that over the last 30 years, under the fee-for-service schedule or the fee-for-service model, all they cared about was their names in the book. Their patients are going to find them. And in medicine, you can't compete on price because it's set by Medicare. Sure, you can negotiate a better contract with a third-party payer, but you can't effectively compete on price unless you're dealing with cosmetics. And Dr. Jones does it for $9 a unit of Botox, and Dr. Smith does it for $11. None of that matters. The whole model is changing. The idea that they have to, and quite frankly, it upsets them. The idea that they have to now be worried about branding and messaging and quality. The ACA is designed to promote quality over quantity, but what it really is it's all an effort to drive down the cost of healthcare. So a physician in today's market has to elevate themselves. They have to brand themselves. They have to have consistent messaging. They have to walk into the 21st century and realize that there's this thing out there called the internet and people talk. So they need to get in front of it. They need to be aware of it. They need to spend some money on it. I would rather see them spending money on internet-based product lines as opposed to the old dropping off pens. You know.
Is there any violations of Stark laws that the medical practices need to be aware of when they're doing their expansions?
It comes down to disclosure, and it depends on the legal structure of the organization, right? If they're an ACO, then there is no Stark law. The Department of Justice has given them a pass. So they don't have the need to disclose the fact that they have a financial interest in referring to Dr. X or this particular MRI center. If they're under the old MSO model, they have to disclose it.
Thank you. Louie.
Yes, a quick question on the case studies. Were those, was the billing done in-house when you showed versus outsourcing that when you said bring it back in? Does that include the billing or revenue cycle management?
They were, in these cases, they were all in-house billing. But there are cases that I have clients that I have suggested outsourcing it because it makes more sense financially.
Thank you. A question here?
I'm kind of intrigued on the labs that were brought back in because been on the provider side, and for so many years providers gave it back, outsourced it because there was no reimbursement. Can you share your secret on how you got the insurance companies to pay this huge amount of money that they gained?
It depends on the specialty. It really does. This particular specialty where we pulled the labs in-house was dermatology. And so you've got biopsies, you've got everything else that's going out the door every month. And they're losing, in my opinion, that physician was losing the opportunity to bill for the technical component of actually taking the specimen and putting it on a slide, sending it to the lab. He had no interest in the professional component. He didn't want to read the slide. He just wanted to capture that piece of the business. But that piece of the business that he was giving away, essentially, was worth $600,000 a year to him.
That's pretty significant. So, Eric, there's been some recent news with the collapse of PUP.
Yeah.
With many of the largest providers in the state of Florida actually suddenly just withdrawing their insurance from these groups. Mm-hmm. And they could just come in Monday morning
Absolutely.
and hear this news and wonder, oh my goodness, what's going to happen to my business? Do they generally know their numbers?
No.
Do they know how much each insurance company is covering, how many patients, and what they could do? Because I've heard some businesses lose 20% or more of their business overnight in the last week.
They do. And like last year, United dropped 55,000 doctors. This year, they've dropped another 20. They're going to drop another 30. Because those particular plans that they're selling they're not in compliance with the ACA. So most physicians don't understand their business mix. They have a general feel for it. They have a gut feeling, Well, I see 80% Medicare. Well, no, you don't. You really see 30% Medicare. You're spending 40% of your time on a plan that is your worst payer. You know, they don't understand it. So it's not the office manager's fault. They just don't understand how to get to that level of detail and put it in a format. So understanding your business mix is incredibly important, because then you can start to manage it on the front end. If I know that patient X with insurance carrier Y is only worth $120 a visit to me, while patient Y with insurance company A is worth $350 to me, I'm going to load my schedule with patient A. You know, it comes down to managing the whole process, but understanding the matrix and giving it to the people at the front desk so they can manage the schedule and template it. It's just, I know it sounds silly, but it's very simple stuff. They're just not doing it.
So the news tomorrow morning, what are we going to hear? What should we be prepared for? If you have some last little bits of advice or information to share with the group this morning.
I think news over the next 6 months is you're going to see innovation on the technology side of medicine and that integration.
I like hearing that. Fine presentation. Thank you, Eric.